and hi everyone. Welcome to the second installment of NAIOP Vancouver's 15 Good Minutes series. I'm Jacqueline O'Neill, Principal of Investments at Bentel Green Oak, and today we are joined by Chuck Wee, who's the Senior Vice President of Western Canada at Hudson Pacific Properties. Welcome, Chuck.
Hi, Jacqueline. Thanks for having me.
So we only have 15 minutes, and so in the spirit of the series, let's dive up right on in here. Wondering if you could give us a quick intro of yourself and how you came to be in your current role.
Sure. So I have, shockingly, I had to count it up. I've been in real estate for just over 26 years. And I came out of a sort of investment finance background from SFU and wanted to get into real estate. And I was told by none other than Tony Astles, who ran Royal LePage Commercial at the time, if you want to get anywhere in real estate, you should be in sales. So join us and be a sales guy. And so I was a broker for a few years. I then went actually over to Bentel Properties for a few years. And then I was over at Oxford for almost 20 years. And I think through everything that I've done, I've just always kind of been a leasing guy at heart. I've really enjoyed kind of working with different tenants over the years, seeing their businesses grow and change. And one of the things I think I realized early on was that, helping people rent office space is a really boring thing to do. So I always like to think about how to make office space more interesting, more creative, a cooler place to be and all that. And I think that's kind of what led me to the current role. When I first met the Hudson Pacific Properties team out of California, it was a bit of a frenemy relationship. I wanted to see how they looked at things. And the more time I spent with them, the more we really kind of lined up the way we were thinking and kind of what they do in terms of creative office and cities that had lots of tech presence and what I thought Vancouver could be. It just really made sense to join the team and sort of walk the walk and try and do things here a little differently at Bentel Center.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great segue. Certainly, Hudson Pacific Properties, and you kind of made a big splash with the acquisition just a little while ago. And I know that we're already seeing some of it, but know that you guys have big plans. Wondering if you can kind of share a bit more what your vision is for Bentel Center and kind of the rough timelines for that.
Sure. Yeah. Timelines are always a tough one with everything that's going on. But I think things are generally going according to plan. So what we wanted to do was split things into buckets and sort of notionally early on, what we knew was that the Bentel Center never really had a problem. It's always stayed really well leased, always had really great tenants, and it was always a place where people really wanted to be. It's got that great service retail, it's got the connection to the SkyTrain, super walkable underground. But what we wanted to do was sort of change the way people were thinking, because that might not always be the way that people want to use or lease space at the Bentel Center. So the buckets that we split it into were kind of the early wins and how to kind of rethink what's happening here. The last bucket, we call it sort of, the back innings or third period, is sort of the development. And then the middle innings, which is more about our big material repositioning projects. So we're through the first period or the early innings, and that's what we call the early wins. So it's things like the dog park that we built, the new fitness center, redoing all the plazas with the new decks that are on there, creating site-wide music, redoing all the back of house lobbies, a bunch of lobbies and washrooms and other types of things. So that's sort of the early stuff. Along the way, we also finished our drawings for what we call the back end, which is the development, and that's actually the mass timber project that we're looking at building in behind me here. And that'll take over one of the existing parking garages. We're super excited about that because it's a 30,000 foot floor plate. The mass timber gives it a really cool kind of loft feeling inside. And we're excited to bring something a little bit different, a little more creative office to the market. And now that we've got that development permit application in place, we're really turning our focus to the middle period, which is what happens to this retail long term. We've tried to do our best with the retailers through the pandemic, and we really want to create an environment where people are going to be drawn to. And that's the stuff that's, I guess, keeping us awake or keeping us interested these days.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's I've certainly seen some of those the early the first space hits that you guys are getting as a currently a tenant in Bentel for here, and hearing the live music and certainly animates that space more, because some of that, had just kind of been left and was quiet, and it was feeling, it made me think back to when I first started working downtown, and I would go to, go for after work drinks at Bentall Center. And so, it would be nice to kind of recapture that same kind of vibe or energy going forward.
You'll remember, like, over the winter, we put up that 40-foot Christmas tree out front and
Yeah, yeah.
piece through. I mean, I was down here on the weekend, like a Saturday night, and there was a lineup of people taking their own selfies and
Yeah.
Instagram pictures on it. I mean, that's what we're trying to achieve and that's a social experiment, I guess, is how do we curate the campus so that people aren't just your business hours. They find a reason to be here like 18 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Definitely. And hopefully that will get easier as we kind of return back to normal, now that hopefully we've kind of battled the most recent wave of Omicron and people will be coming back downtown more often.
Yeah.
So we talk, I think in these things, sometimes we focus a lot on like Vancouver and like what we're doing here, but I know kind of where you are, you have a view in terms of what you guys are doing in other cities. So I was hoping we could kind of take a little bit of a broader view and, what are you seeing, or what cities do you think we should look to model our kind of downtown or employment areas going forward?
Right. And I think that sort of relates to that ambition of driving that kind of called 18-hour day, 6 day a week instead of just the business traffic. And I look at the regions we're in. So whether it's Seattle in Pioneer Square or downtown San Francisco or parts of Los Angeles as real leaders in that kind of creative office and rethinking workspace and whatnot. But I actually think back to my own travels in places like London, England, and Hong Kong and Melbourne. When you go into Melbourne, and if you look up sort of the laneways of Melbourne, there's these little alleyways you can walk into, and there's music and disco balls, and like the best coffee shops are down these little breezeways, and there are these little hidden gems in their downtown cores. And that's sort of the thing that we're looking for, whether it's something like Covent Garden in London or the central area of Hong Kong. There's always sort of the if you know moments. And I think every special downtown has those little secret moments that once you find them, like it becomes a place that people want to try and discover more about. So those are kind of the cities that I look to for ideas like that.
Yeah, what I loved when I went to Sydney a few years ago was the breakfast culture, and breakfast is a thing. People go out for that, and that.
Dude,
And
why
how
don't
do
we
you?
have a breakfast culture
I
here?
don't know. Like, I feel it'd be so great to like integrate that into like part of your day, and maybe it's like a meeting thing, but to have places like that, I think would be awesome.
I totally agree.
So I guess pivoting back to Bentall Center, and I've been going back to the office myself. I'm not there today because I'm hoping to make sure I had my negative antigen test to get on the plane to Hawaii tomorrow. But it seems like people are starting to go back in. Wondering what the big focus for your team was in terms of operations at Bentall Center, and where you see occupancy going through the balance of the year here.
Right. Right. And so I think you hit on the two exact sort of themes there. I think the first is health and safety. That has to be the priority, and that's gonna be around for a long time now. And I think that on the operations side is something that we're focusing on company-wide and regionally. Like, how do you stay ahead of the curve on any kind of health and safety measures that you have to? And if this comes back, like, how do you quickly enact the policies you need to make sure everyone still feels safe and healthy coming back to the office? And then the second side is that whole creative office piece and what we sort of see trending back. And I think that, people that have a debate about work from home versus work from the office, what we're seeing is it's not going to be binary for people. Everyone's going to be moving towards some form of hybrid. Luckily, that means you're probably not going to leave your office space. It probably means you're just going to use it a little bit differently. And that's the focus for us is how do you turn the office space into something that people needed before, like you had to have a lease to house your people, to something that they want in the future, where it's like, well, we want to be part of this campus because it's got great food, great culture, lots of reasons for people to get interested and come back together. So it's that whole pivot of, in a hybrid world, are you going to be that place that's more where people want to be, or less of less of the other?
Yeah, I kind of view it as like the office becoming almost more of a work tool in terms of, when you're looking at your day and like why you're going downtown, what you have going on. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of how do you kind of make sure that the office remains kind of a useful tool for people in their jobs going forward. And because it certainly needs to be a little bit more than just, a, a chair at a desk somewhere.
Yeah, totally agree.
So kind of going back to the other side, and I know we're both seeing a little bit of this right now, but you're the one who's on the hot seat. On the office leasing front, Ted and Glenn talked about it a lot in the first installment of our 15 good minutes. But just wanted to play a bit of a word game with you, called What's the Word? And so I'm going to say a sentence, and then you could say kind of the word that you think describes it, and feel free to elaborate a little bit further on that if you'd like. So just to, for direct comparison to what Glenn said, first question is the downtown sublease market is.
Right. And what did Glenn say?
What did he say? Yeah, I don't know what he said. I listened to it. He had something catchy.
Okay.
Do you have a catchy, or is it like, what do you think?
My word for the downtown sublease market is overrated.
Oh, okay, yeah, I like it.
I think it feels like it's been a little bit picked over and the deals just aren't there. Like I think in the early days of the pandemic, there were a few really interesting subleases that came on the market and you sort of looked at it and said, oh, we could be in kind of trouble if a lot of these start coming out and we've got our own head lease spaces. But when you look and see what's left out there, I just don't think it's that competitive. Early on, we saw subleases with decent amount of term, like 4, 5, 6 years. They were essentially turnkey, furniture was included, really cool hip spots. Now it's like, okay, it's unimproved, or it's got a year and a half left, or it's got some term, but you're not sure what's going to happen to the head tenant. And so I think that, to me, it just feels a little bit overrated. I know that for the subleases that we see out there, a lot of times the conversation just pivots directly to the landlord and says, okay, landlord, we see this sublease. What's the head lease look like?
Yeah.
So that to me means it's probably not, gonna be as big a driver as we've seen.
I completely agree. It was, I think, early days when it was all spiking, and your portfolio managers are asking about it. And I was like, well, it's really easy to list your space for sublease, to kind of like cast a wide net, see what comes out. But to actually like transact and commit to that with a sublease tenant is a far higher bar. And when we looked at it from that point, it was like, okay, how much of this is real versus how much of this is like, it's COVID and we're just exploring our options because we don't know what's happening.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that so many tenants had a hard time getting office space, getting permits, building it out, furnishing it. A lot of them are having a hard time thinking, okay, if we do get rid of it, how do we restart this engine? Like,
Yeah.
Are we for sure never ever going to need this, or should we just hold on to it just in case?
Totally. Okay, on to the next one. The overall demand in the downtown market is.
It's split. So I think that demand for good assets is going to be great. Like, and that's the pivot, right? Creative office, interesting space, trophy assets. And I think that anything that's commoditized, kind of, average space, not great amenities, I think is going to be a little bit weak. Those buildings are going to struggle. And that's sort of the rallying cry for downtown. I think that hopefully a lot of landlords see that, and they see that the capital reinvestment is now required. Like, let's get on with it. Let's start making downtown someplace great to be again, and start investing that capital to reposition all those assets so that there isn't that split market.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for so many reasons, making your space relevant. How do you address health and safety concerns? Also, the whole sustainability conversation that's going on. How do these older buildings pivot to that? Totally agree. Okay, on to our last question. Not real estate related, but maybe topical given the news last Friday. Masks are.
I think masks are very Canadian and very fashionable. I think that Canadians are generally super considerate, and the messaging I think is pretty accurate. Like, wearing a mask in a crowded settings will be one of those unspoken, nice, considerate things to do.
Yeah.
I saw people on the news coming off buses saying, yeah, I just feel like it's the right thing to do. We're not quite there yet. And we've also found a way to make masks really comfortable and good looking. Like these are our Lululemon
Ooh.
masks. And I think that I'll have a hard time giving up my nice masks, so I think that they're just a great fashion accessory at this
So they're
point.
here to stay.
I think there's always going to be an element of masking.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing either.
No, definitely not. Well, it seems like we're starting to run low on time here, so let's get through these last few questions. Going head to head with Glenn Gardner's prediction on where office vacancy was going to be a year from now, what is your over under on the 6.5% threshold?
So I'm going to say over, but it's not because of demand. It'll be because of new developments getting occupancy and opening up and increasing the denominator. So I think vacancy will be up, but absorption, like bums in seats, will be up as well.
Yeah. Well, we have 4 questions left, but I want to make sure that we don't miss a couple of these. So I guess
we're going over.
We're going over. Okay. So then what gets you excited about coming to work?
I like to see what crazy ideas my team has coming up next. So whether it's the design of our repositioning projects to the programming and the events, the beer gardens, Fleur de Vie, Vancouver Mural Festival, all those great events that we're creating, to the social and charitable events that we do. So like Habitat for Humanity Days, Food Bank Days, all of those great things that we can now come back to and do together. That's what gets me excited about coming back to work.
Okay. It's that's definitely, it's like, why do we go to the office? It's generally not the things that you think about in terms of your day-to-day job. So totally agree. What is something that you think would surprise people to learn about you?
I think one thing that people don't really know is that in high school, for a very short period of time, I was a cheerleader. So
leadership potential.
That's right. Our girlfriends were on the cheerleading squad, and we weren't going to let any of the other guys throw them around. So I was what they call a stunter. We would pick the girls up and throw them in the air. And then they made us actually learn the cheers and the dances, and that's when I had to quit the team.
Oh, well, that makes me sad. Anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to here?
So many different people, but because this is NAIOP, I do want to give a shout out to all of the past presidents of NAIOP. So if you ever see a roster of all the past presidents, it's a total who's who. When you go back to my era, it was Bill Tucker, Tom Knoffel, Jeff Rank, myself. Just a great roster of people, leaders, both up and coming and legendary in the market. So shout out to all the past presidents.
Awesome. Love it. All right. And now what are you excited about for 2022 to round it out?
Oh, getting back to events. No doubt. So, Whistler ICSC is coming up. We've got Rugby Sevens in April, Formula E this summer, even the fireworks. We've got some people in our shop actually talking about going back to the Calgary Stampede this year. So who knows? But I think that's it. It's the great events that we'll see coming back.
Completely agree. So that is it. Thank you, Chuck, for all of that. I definitely learned a lot. You made me even more excited about the upcoming years. So hopefully those tuning in got pumped as well. Thanks to everybody who joined us today, and stay tuned for the next installment of our 15 Good Minutes. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jacqueline.